It's estimated that Lyme disease affects 400,000 Americans each and every year. And the New York Times recently printed an article that has the Lyme community wanting to set the record straight. So we got a patient and advocate and the host of the podcast In the Lyme Light, Alexandra Moresco, here to talk about it. Thanks for coming on the program, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what Lyme disease is, because I think most of us have heard about it, but what exactly is it?
So you get Lyme disease by obviously being bit by a tick. You get a corkscrew-shaped bacteria called a spirochete, and it basically buries itself into your body and launches this attack if you don't catch it right away. So it's basically like a systematic shutdown of your body.
And it's an infection, right?
Yes, it's an infection.
Okay, so the New York Times came out with this article, and the headline was really striking about this person's son got Lyme disease. He's totally fine. They kind of talk about some of the problems with Lyme disease and associated with it, but this has a lot of people in the Lyme community upset. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so as you know, the New York Times printed this article by a journalist about 3 weeks ago, I think now, and people were upset because it was just very biased and very unbalanced. And I think the main issue was, Forbes said it best. They were the first one to respond that Lyme disease can present in so many different ways. You really need to have a broader perspective on that and show it in a fair light, because it's not easy to treat and it's not easy to diagnose.
When you're talking about awareness of diseases and making sure that people don't suffer unnecessarily, I think an article like that it can be a little bit of a disservice to the community in terms of if you're trying to find solutions and make people aware, you don't want them to be disarmed with some article like that. Is that kind of what you guys were most upset about? And then how do you counter that in terms of making sure that people, while they read the article, understand that there's more information out there?
Yes, so I think I think the community was upset. Organizations are upset, and the science community was upset just because there is tons of peer-to-peer reviewed research out there. In 2018, Johns Hopkins published a study, very reputable, obviously, research program, proving the existence of chronic Lyme disease. So to say either that it doesn't exist or it's not a big deal, it's just really not true.
You're an advocate for this because you've been through your own journey with this. Maybe you could share your story a little bit about how you found out about your diagnosis of Lyme disease and your journey through that.
Absolutely. So I'm 26. At 22, I got very, very sick. I had a lot of neurological symptoms. I started to lose my memory and I was bedridden, and it was all after a trip to northern Michigan for the first time. And I never had a bullseye. I never found a tick. Most people actually don't. It's a common misconception. And I was very sick for 2 years, and eventually a doctor at Northwestern thought, hey, we should test you for Lyme disease. And sure enough, that's what it was, and it came back positive. So 2 years later, I'm still in treatment, and thankfully not bedridden anymore. I'm doing better, but I've developed a heart problem, which we're working on, and that's kind of what happens with Lyme. It goes to your organs if it goes too long. But it's not all bad. I started working with an organization called Global Lyme Alliance. Most people don't realize that past 30 days insurance doesn't really cover treatment, so people are just really left to struggle. And I help bring GLA to Chicago, and we do a lot of fundraising here and a lot of patient advocacy, and it's been a really positive thing for me.
Man, it's amazing. I think you're an incredible advocate just to show people out there that they need to be aware of those symptoms. Yeah. Because again, if you don't catch it right away, you may have no idea what's happening to your body. What are some ways that people can prevent it? I know we have a couple, I don't want to call them tips, but things that people can do out there to try and prevent this from happening to them. Yeah,
so thankfully there are preventative measures you can take. Wear DEET or some kind of tick repellent. Permethrin-treated clothing kills ticks on contact. Tick checks, check your kids, check yourself, check your pets, and then you can create tick tubes just by treating cotton with permethrin and putting it in your yard.
It's such an important thing to realize, especially you mentioned northern Michigan. Yeah. People here in Chicago, we vacation in northern Michigan, absolutely. Wisconsin, Minnesota, and that's where ticks obviously live, especially this time of year. Thank you so much for stopping by, Alex. I really appreciate it. Okay, for more information on learning about Lyme disease, head to globallymealliance.org. And of course, tune into the podcast. Head to limelightnewsletter.com.